Hey guys, just before the video starts, I want to just apologise for the upcoming audio that you're about to get. Unfortunately, for some reason, there's a lot of crackling that's been going on in my latest recordings. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to find ways to fix it, but in order to get a video out, it's either this or the camera audio, which is abysmal. So, again, I apologise. It's not going to sound great. If it's unbearable, I completely understand. But, yeah. Hopefully you enjoy the video. Hello everyone, my name is Rob. Welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'll be giving you my Super League Round 5 predictions. Just to quickly recap last week before we get on with this week. I got 5 out of 6. Unfortunately, I was let down by Saints versus Salford. But of course, a red card was a key factor in that game. I've got 19 for 24 so far this season. And my rate of predictions is 79.17%. So if we can get into the 80s after this week, that would be great. But let's crack on with the first game of round 5. Starting off in round 5, we have Salford Red Devils versus Wigan Warriors. Starting with league position, Salford are in 6th, Wigan are in 1st. In terms of current form, Salford have won 3 of their 4 games, Wigan have won 3 of their 3 games. In terms of power rankings, I have them both in the same place, Salford in 6th and Wigan in 1st. Starting with Salford and their performance against Saints, I think they did a good job to take the opportunities when they had them. So fair play, you know, there's that famous saying, you can only play what's in front of you. They played against 12 players and they came up with the win towards the back end of the game. My biggest concern is that they were aided by that, of course, but they also conceded points whilst being a man up. They're not the only team to have done it this season, and they will not be the last. But when it was 13 on 13, they were pretty much out of the game. So for me, there's still a clear difference between Salford and the top 2, and Wigan are one of those top 2 teams. On the side of Wigan, last week, as much as, you know, it's great that they scored 60 points and they were still without Bevan French and Harry Smith, I didn't really like how chaotic the performance was. It wasn't as clean as you normally expect, and again, that's probably due to no French or Smith. Fair enough. So assuming that they will be available, I haven't actually seen any squads yet, and I don't think they've been announced yet. Assuming that they'll be there, Wigan should be fine in this game. Defensively, they were a little bit off, and they allowed London to kind of throw them around and get them out of position a bit, and maybe Salford could do the same. I think players like Cade Cust do really well in off-the-cuff moments, and provided that the structure that Sneed and Brierley put together, they could, you know, they could offer some questions for the Wigan defence, because London actually certainly did, and I wasn't expecting that. But Wigan, for me, are just too precise, too quick and precise in attack. And Salford have been fine defensively, but I don't know if they're going to be good enough to compete with Wigan. So I think it'll be a respectable scoreline, but it'll kind of, it will show the clear gap between the two teams. But I absolutely think that the solid performances from Salford this season will reflect in this game, and Wigan will still have their good and bad moments, because they're not a perfect team by any means, but they'll still be superior. So I'm going to go with Salford Red Devils 16, Wigan Warriors 28. Next up, we have Leeds Rhinos versus St Helens. Started with league position, Leeds are in 5th, Saints are in 2nd. In terms of current form, Leeds have won 3 out of their 4 games. Saints have also won 3 out of their 4 games. In terms of power rankings, I have Leeds in 4th and Saints in 2nd. I was really tempted to move Saints up into 1st in my power rankings this week after being as dominant as they were against Salford and putting up points when they were a man down. I think the fact that they lost the game was one of the reasons that they didn't move up, and some things that I justified about Wigan's performance. Leeds, you have to acknowledge they were 16-0 down. They made a great comeback, fair enough to them. They were also aided by the fact that Leigh had a sin bin at one point as well, so that helped shift the momentum. I do think there is still a clear gap. 1st and 2nd in the power rankings for me are really sort of breaking away a little bit. There's maybe a few teams in the midfield. Maybe Warrington's improved week in, week out, but there's a very recognisable gap there. And Saints are normally too efficient with the ball, really strong defensively, really precise in attack, much like Wigan. And they can punish you through the middle especially. Like Wigan, they spread the ball very well. Saints also do that, but they know how to get through teams in the middle of the park. And if you can't defend in the middle, you're kind of screwed. Leeds they've been okay defensively. There's not been any major hiccups in their defence, I don't think. But I don't really see them challenging. I feel this will be a little bit similar to Salford v Wigan. Respectable performance, but we'll see the clear gap between the two teams. But provided Leeds can put in a strong performance, and their first few games this season have been real tough challenges. They've played a lot of midfield teams. If they put in a strong performance here, and Saints aren't quite on it, I think they could really push them down to the wire. But I'm going to go with Leeds Rhinos 12, St Helens 22. Next up we have Huddersfield Giants versus Hull Kingston Rovers, starting with league position. Huddersfield are in 8th, Hull KR are in 7th. In terms of current form, Huddersfield have won 2 of their 4 games, Hull KR have also won 2 of their 4 games. In terms of power rankings, Giants are in 8th and Hull KR are in 3rd. Hull, to a lot of people, are on the decline at the moment. They've lost the last 2 games to Warrington and Salford. I don't see any reason to panic just yet. Maybe if they lost this one, you could start to have some concern. But against this Giants team, it's a bit of a strange one because they are extremely inconsistent. Now, granted, the losses that the Giants have had have come against Saints and Wigan, and they were some pretty rough efforts. But in terms of the wins that they've had, it was a pretty strong performance against Leigh and a mega performance against Castleford. Completely unexpected. So the Giants are a little bit of a question mark for me. Too inconsistent. And even when Hull KR have lost, they've still looked good to decent, or decent to good, whichever one you put above the other. But Hull KR have still looked fine even when they've lost. They still have the same characteristics, the same grit, the same skill individually. A lot of that comes from Mikey Lewis. I think they are missing a little bit somewhere. Maybe at fullback. I did mention in a comment in one of my previous videos that I'm not too sure about Hiku at fullback. I have my doubts. The Giants squad is still really strong on paper, but of course games aren't won on paper. So I think there's a close game to be had here. But because I'm not panicking about Hull KR yet, I'm still leaning towards them, and as the Giants are still a bit of a question mark. Because that result against Castleford came out of nowhere, and we'd seen the kind of abysmal performances they had before that. So, a close game, sure, but still not panicking for Hull KR. Sorry, make sure to say the whole thing, the Hull KR. So I'm going to go with the Giants 18, Hull Kingston Rovers 24. Next up we have Hull FC versus Lee Leopards, starting with standings. Hull FC are in 9th, Leigh are in 10th in terms of current form. Hull FC have won 1 of their 4 games, Leigh have won 0 of their 3 games. In terms of power rankings, I have Hull FC in 10th and Lee Leopards in 9th. Leigh moved down 2 places in my power rankings, mainly because they gave up a 16-0 lead, and of course, as I referenced before, they were a man down at one point. I think that this would have been fairly comfortable. Like a few weeks back, like if this was an opener, I would have thought this was very comfortable for Leigh. But the fact that I'm not sure if Lamb's available, and again, I still need to do research on that, so I apologise. I don't think Lamb's available, and there's still no Epape. He's out for forever. So that's going to allow Hull to kind of creep into this one a little bit. Hull were okay against Catalans. They didn't do anything particularly great. Catalans in attack were a bit rusty, but they showed a bit of fight. They showed something. I think when they're at their full capacity, their forward pack, provided they don't try and swing their arm at people or, accidentally clash heads like Farmanu Brown with his dangerous noggin, they'll be alright with a full squad, and they can push some teams to the end, but they still need to find who they are as a team. Individually, they've got some good players in there, but as a team, they're just pretty poor. Leigh haven't been particularly great. They haven't won a game yet. But I think the performance against Huddersfield wasn't so far off. Performance against Saints was a valiant effort, and then the fact that they were competitive against Leeds is also a good sign. So I do think Leigh are still front runners for this one, still favourites for me, but the loss of Lamb and Noah Pape is still going to hinder them a bit. But I think Moylan and O'Brien, Hardacre, these guys can still produce points. So it's not going to be tremendously close for me, but I think Leigh could just about make it work based on team performances. But we'll have to see. But I'm going to go with Hull FC 14, Leigh Leopards 22. Next up we have Catalans Dragons versus Castleford Tigers. Starting with league position, Catalans are in 3rd. Castleford are in 11th in terms of current form. Catalans have won 3 of their 4 games. Castleford have lost all 4 of their games. Tremendous start. In terms of power rankings, Catalans are 5th for me and Castleford are 11th. I could have really put Castleford in 12th for the power rankings, and I was also potentially considering moving Catalans down based on the performance from Salford compared to Catalans. As I said before, Catalans were a bit rusty in attack. They were given some good opportunities, but they didn't really take them. They looked very one-dimensional, very Warrington Wolves-like from round 1. So that was a slight concern for me, because when I think of Catalans, I think of a really well-structured, well-controlled, efficient team. And defensively, they're still going to be really strong. But there was just a couple gaps against Hull, which I wasn't really expecting. It was kind of like, well, hang on a minute. This is Hull. And you are the Catalans Dragons. I'm expecting a much more clean and structured defensive performance. But it's just kind of thrown out of shape, just slightly. But I think things should be a little bit more normal this week. Castleford will want to show some kind of pride after last week's performance and some kind of effort. Are they going to produce it? I think they'll absolutely fight, but in terms of quality, I don't think they'll compete. So we'll see a prideful performance. In terms of the actual execution, it's not going to be enough. And I think Catalans will be disappointed with their attacking efforts. I think they'll clean some things up. I mean, Jordan Abdul, Artemorg, Theophage, they're still going to try and get used to each other. And, week to week, there will be some dips. So I think Catalans will be a lot better this week. So I'm going to go with Catalans Dragons 32, Castleford Tigers 10. Finally, for round 5, we have London Broncos versus Warrington Wolves. Starting with league position, London are in 12th. Warrington Wolves are in 4th in terms of current form. London have also won 0 of their 4 games, and Warrington have won 3 of their 4 games. There are actually 6 teams that are on 6 points at the moment, which is quite incredible. In terms of power rankings, London are 12th for me at the moment. Warrington are in 7th. As I said before as well, London could have taken a step up above the Castleford Tigers. One of the reasons that I couldn't have done that was essentially because they conceded 60 points, which is more than I expected, and that was assuming that French and Smith would be there as well. I didn't even think about Wigan potentially resting them. So the fact that they conceded so many points and Wigan rested players, they had a bunch of kids in there, is still a key reason to keep them last in the power rankings. However, on the attacking side, they really threw Wigan out of shape a couple times, created opportunities by themselves. I think the referee was pretty poor at times, so one thing you could look at was discipline, but I don't think they were that poorly disciplined. The one thing I did notice most about them was they were absolutely knackered, because the pace that Wigan play with is just on another level to what the Broncos can handle at the moment. But what I like about their experience so far is that they've really been thrown into the deep end, and we kind of saw that being rewarded. So they started with St Helens, and then I think they had Catalans after that, and then I think it was Hull in round 3, and we saw that they played 2 really strong teams, strong in defence and attack, and then came up against a team that's pretty much a liability so far this season. So they were kind of rewarded for learning the pace of the game so quickly. And then they got thrown in the deep end again the week after against Wigan, and now they have to play against a Warrington team that's been on the rise the last couple of weeks. So will those moments of being thrown in the deep end kind of help them to get even closer this week to a team that's sort of midfield further towards the bottom? Maybe. Warrington Wolves, as I said, improving week on week, getting Matt Duffy more involved in the attack. Biggest issue with him at the moment is still a bit of a liability with with catching the ball at the back. Communication has been a little bit off, so that's something that London can really look to exploit. However, Leon Hayes and George Williams look really comfortable together. Hopefully George Williams has also healed a little bit more. He wasn't really aggravated, hopefully, from last week. Danny Walker continues to improve and become a leader week in, week out in the absence of Darryl Clark. Sam Powell offers a bit of composure off the bench, and the forwards, the typical, Paul Vaughan, really smashing teams through the middle. So, and of course Ben Curry in a loose forward position has really sort of given a new edge to Warrington as well. So Warrington on the rise week in, week out. I think a strong statement win is possible here. A couple tries are on the cards for London because, again, the right-hand side defensively of Warrington is a bit shaky. And London have been creating their own opportunities, not like they've just been gifted them from like dodgy, chaotic moments from a kick into the corner, things like that. Or, there's been 1 or 2 interceptions, but they're not constantly gifted points. They are creating their own points, which is great to see. So I do think they can put some numbers up here, but Warrington, given their improvements week in, week out, and the kind of pace they've got in their team and the experience on all areas of the field, I think it might be Warrington's turn now to pick up a huge bag of tries. So yeah, I'm going to go with London Broncos 10, Warrington Wolves 44. So that's going to be it for my predictions this week. If you have your own predictions, do let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you would like to follow me on TikTok, I'm going to be posting some more content there. You can see the link in the description down below. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.